Transition Tuesday. I'm Jane. This is Joe. So this is our last year of school, Joe's last year of school. And we are talking about how Joe's transition planning is proceeding along as we do this last year of school and look forward to the future where Joe will no longer be in school. Today's episode is centering on Joe. Joe likes this. So we are calling it centering on Joe because we are going to look at Joe's process through the lens of person-centered planning. So person-centered planning was developed by a group of folks. In fact, we're going to be quoting some of the work by John O'Brien and Connie Lyle. They looked at people with disabilities and what they need to function in their communities. And they learned that when you focused on the person and what their needs are, then you could move out into the community and make a better quality of life for those people. So I am just so in awe of the way they were able to create a science around how to do this. So I want to talk about one particular part of person-centered planning, 5 accomplishments. So they looked at what do people need to accomplish to make them part of their community, to have a good quality of life. And they came up with these 5. Community presence, community participation, encouraging valued social roles, promoting choice, and supporting contributions. So we're going to get into detail about each one of these, and we've decided, Joe and I decided this morning, we are going to rank Joe on each of these, sorry, I dropped my cards, each of these accomplishments, and just do one accomplishment over the next 5 weeks so that you don't have to watch a 2-hour-long video. We're going to break it down into little groups. So here is our rating scale, 1 to 5, 1 being no presence at all, and 5 being famous. So let's start with the first accomplishment. And that's what we're going to focus on this week, community presence. So we gave Joe a 2 on community presence on our rating scale of 1 to 5. And this is what I've noticed. When Joe was younger, he was more present at community events. So that's kind of on me because when Joe was younger, frankly, he was easier to take places. So we went to more places with Joe because it was easier. Part of it also is Joe. If we are truly being person-centered, I have a responsibility to include Joe in the decision-making process, in the promoting choice accomplishment. And so Joe often, as a 21-year-old, does not want to do the things that we used to take him to do when he was younger, which makes total sense. We are also understanding that Joe's participation in things needs to be truly his. I'll give you an example. Joe used to participate in a recreation league for people with disabilities. But Joe required a maximum amount of support to participate in these sports. And what ended up happening was Joe's dad was doing, hand over hand or running the bases with him. And there was no way for Joe to be more autonomous. It was kind of like dad was taking over the sport. Not intentionally, but from a physical sense, Joe's dad was really taking over the sport. And after a while, when we started involving Joe in making decisions for himself, he was choosing not to participate in that particular thing. So we stepped away from it. So that was every Saturday for several months out of the year because there were several different sports. So then all of a sudden, that community presence Joe was no longer a presence in that community and also in the larger recreation department community. So how do we go forward? That's not the only thing Joe can do to be present in the community is play sports. So here's the question we ask ourselves. If we wanted to make this 2 a higher number on the scale, what could change? So here's what we need to do to help change that number from a 2 to maybe a 3 or a 4. Ask Joe. Ask Joe what he wants all the time, always. Person-centered means ask Joe what he wants. And then Joe must respond. So Joe, if I ask you a question and we truly want you to be the decision maker, that means that you have to choose. And as you can see, Joe is struggling a little bit right now. But that is normal for Joe. Joe's spasticity causes him to, move this way. If you look at every one of our videos, you probably see him do this in every single one of our videos. This is Joe's reality. But it's not an excuse for him not to respond to a question. Joe, are you working on answering questions? Do we work on that every single day? Yes? Tell me with your voice or touch my hand. Do we work on you answering questions and making decisions every day? Would you say yes? Would you agree? We have been. If you recall, we started in January with the SMART goal, which we are actually tracking. And you can see this paper, which represents the decisions Joe made in March, has only 1 or 2 little blank spaces on it. We really have been working hard at making sure Joe has every possible opportunity to make decisions about his life. And as you can see from the reaction, this is very important. And this is what John O'Brien and Connie Lyle recognized about the importance of person-centered planning. Joe is in there. Joe wants to be able to have these accomplishments happen in his life so that he can lead an adult life that has quality, engagement, joy, responsibility, autonomy, all of those things that every adult expects to have in their life. That's what we're working towards. So track over time, which we are doing. And the reason I say to track that, the reason I say to track decisions is because it makes it easier for you to identify trends. If I can look at that chart and say the thing that he picked the most was, let me see, the thing that he picked the most was things relating to personal comfort, I would say. That is a big priority for Joe because he struggles with daily pain from spasticity. So being comfortable would be a big choice for Joe. Asking him how to make him more comfortable would be a priority. Do you agree? And then encourage Joe to try. Joe has a friend that just takes him places. I don't know if she asks him a lot of questions, but she just takes him out and does things with him. And that's really a blessing because if mom and dad take him out places and do things with him, how many 21-year-olds relish the idea of social engagements with their parents? I guess there are some who really value that, but the majority of them, I would be willing to say, maybe during the holidays, but the rest of the time, they want to be with their friends. They are choosing their, almost creating a new family for themselves. That's what young people do. That's what I did. That's why I have a family, because I made choices about who I wanted to spend my time with, what we wanted to do, where we were going to live, what kind of job I was going to have. All of those things led me to being Joe's mom. Now, Joe needs a lot of support, but there's no reason why he can't have a social existence that is separate from his parents, as long as he's safe and, you know, the person is responsible and trustworthy and all of those things. But Joe needs to be encouraged to try because it takes so much for him to be out in the community. The other thing is reinforce and plan for success. So when I say reinforce, I'm talking about if something is working, continue that. Reinforce those good experiences so that Joe will be more encouraged to try. It's kind of a circle. And then you have to plan. Like Joe needs certain things. He's on a med schedule. So if you know you're going to be out, I mean, I wish that Joe could just be fancy free and go do things without planning, but that is not the reality. The reality is Joe has to have certain things to be comfortable and to fit in socially. So that means, and when I say that, I mean social conventions. We all have to wear clothes. Joe's clothes need to be clean. We don't want him to go out into the world with, you know, looking like he's in a hospital. So he wears clothes that are appropriate. He doesn't wear a hospital gown. He chooses not to wear a bib, although he drools, and so our compromise is for him, actually he doesn't have one on right now, to wear a bandana tied around his neck. So at least it doesn't look like a bib. I mean, these are things that we plan for and organize for so that Joe can participate in society in a way that allows him to be as included as he possibly can be. Now, does that mean that people don't stare at him with their mouths wide open, and that some people don't even understand why a person like him would be out and about? Yes. But until we achieve these accomplishments that John O'Brien and Connie Lyle were talking about, nothing will ever change, and the lives of people with disabilities will never change. So that's why this is so important. And the last thing that I have to remind myself, let Joe go. Let him go. Just like any other mother of any other 21-year-old, you have to let your child, when they become an adult, go. And that's what we're working on. But we want this scale of Joe's ability to be out in the world. We want at least to get this to a 3. We want to examine where we are and work on some goals to improve Joe's access to the community so that when he's not in school anymore, school is an instant community. When Joe is not in school anymore, how are we going to exist in the world? This is a vital question for Joe's quality of life and for other people with disabilities in our community. What can we create? What is already there? What needs to be there? And how can we make that happen for people? How can we find those people who are at home, sitting on their couch, feeling isolated and depressed and lonely because they think there's no place for them in the community? What a tragedy that is. And, you know, Joe is working hard to make his life more fulfilling. And if we can help someone else make their life more fulfilling by Joe's example, then we will really have, well, we could have an accomplishment number 6, helping others. So anyway, next week, we will talk about one of the other accomplishments. We hope you'll join us. See you next time.